what's really interesting is coming up with titles for YouTube videos that you haven't recorded yet. Because I do most of my videos live, and so I'm just kind of guessing what I'm going to talk about. So, full transparency, I think why I'm inspired to do this video is partially due to the fact that I am caffeinated, but I do have a bunch of things to share with you. So, I'm trying to figure out my relationship to coffee, and I feel really unsure about it. I feel, I'm like, am I addicted to coffee now? I don't know. I've said this so many times, but I'll say it again. Like, I was not a coffee drinker up until recently, and I think it started a couple years ago. I honestly feel like I started to get into coffee when I discovered Oatly oat milk, and I remember having it at one of the conventions that I go to, and it just was so good. I was like, I want to have this all the time, and I really like matcha, but lately I much prefer coffee, and there's just something about the way coffee tastes that is just so satisfying. And so I just like want to have coffee every day. And then I want to give you guys an update on my diet. And I also want to emphasize the fact that because of my history with disordered eating, it's super important to me to ask you to be really mindful about any comments that you make regarding my appearance and my weight. It is a huge sore subject for me and triggering. I'm really open to talking about it, but in terms of people that giving me advice based on what I look like, that really triggers me. And I think it triggers me because I grew up with a mother that was really, really nitpicky about how I look, and to this day she still is, and it's hurtful. And I think right now in society, like, we put so much emphasis on what people look like, and we tie in like measures of like love and validation and success and all these different things into our appearances. And as I've said in other videos, it's a balancing act for me. Anything related to my health, I have to really look inward and decide why I'm doing it. Am I doing it for some external validation, or am I doing it because it feels really important for myself at the core? So I need to preface it that way. And also just advice in general about health, like I feel really triggered by. And I actually had a bit of an aha moment yesterday. I was listening to this audiobook, and in it was like a business success audiobook. And the author is somebody that I really respect, and he was talking about like his journey and how somebody pointed out to him that one of the big things that holds him back is that he is constantly questioning whether what he's doing is right or wrong. And that I was like, oh, like that sounds like exactly what's been going on for me. And I started to think about my life, and I think that based on the way I was raised, especially by my mom, I'm sure my dad had some input on this, but also in school, like our school systems, I think in general, like we are raised to live life based through a lens of right or wrong. Like, are you doing things right or are you doing things wrong? And we get rewarded for doing things right, whatever that means in the context. So like anything from school quizzes, tests and all that stuff. Like, do you get the answers right? If so, you'll get a really good grade. And if you get a really good grade, then, your parents will be approving of you, and your teachers will be approving of you, and maybe your peers will be approving of you. And then you can get into the college that you want. And then you think, like, if you get into the right college, then you can live the life that you want. I mean, I definitely thought that, and it's so funny now how much the world has changed. A little tangent is, it's like looking back into how I viewed life up until like the past 5 to 10 years. Like, I just had this viewpoint of of like, you know, following this career path. And ever since I became an entrepreneur and worked for myself, it's just really interesting when you realize how much more control you have. And I think for so long, I just thought like, you know, you had to pay your dues and you had to do all this stuff. And it was like, I've spent so much of my life trying to please other people in order to get what I wanted, right? And I think that we often do that as human beings if we're trying to get love. If, you know, usually it comes down to love, right? Like we want the approval of others so that we're accepted, we're loved, we're taken care of. That's very tied into survival, all of that. So if you go down through like the whole psychological process that we have, there's just a lot going on when we make all sorts of decisions, and our self-worth, our self-esteem, all of that. So coming back to what I started to talk about, which is being raised by a mom who I think really does view the world through right and wrong. Like my mom is very black and white. She's incredibly judgmental. I don't know if that's how she was raised. Like I guess so, but I've talked to one of my uncles, and I've talked to a few of my relatives just to learn more about how my mom was raised, and they said that she's been like that most of her life. Actually, this is a really interesting little side note, you know, nature versus nurture. I talked about this movie, Three Identical Strangers. It's a documentary I saw probably about a month ago, 2 or 3 weeks maybe. Highly, highly recommend it. It's so good, and it really ties into this idea of nature versus nurture. And I think that my mom had this turning point in her life because of her parents' divorce. My parents are still together, so I don't know what it's like to have parents that get divorced, but my mom was really greatly affected by that. I think she's not somebody that I think would talk to me about this stuff. And I didn't mean to make this video about my mom, but I'll dig into that a little bit more. It's such a sore subject because my mom and I feel like I have to protect myself a lot with my mom, and I feel like I've never really gotten my mom's approval. I feel like it's temporary, and that probably says so much about me. It's obviously a painful thing, but maybe I've just spent so much of my life trying to get my mom's approval, and because it always feels so temporary, it's like never ending. So it's amazing. Like, I'm going home to see my family. I'm doing a lot of traveling on the East Coast in September and the beginning of October. And I'll actually I'm hoping and I'm highly considering doing some meetups and events on the East Coast. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, I highly recommend doing that because I'm putting a lot of work into the newsletter, and starting maybe hopefully this week, my plan is to like relaunch it, and like just got a lot planned. And anyway, so just thinking about my upcoming trip, I noticed how much of the decisions I'm making are reflective on getting my mom's approval. So, and my sister too, which is also really tough, is my sister is so much like my mom, or at least the view of which I perceive my sister is like, I just see so much of my mom and my sister. And both of them are very like, concerned with their appearances. And because they're very concerned with their appearances, they're also concerned with other people's appearances. My sister has, compared to my mom, doesn't seem that concerned about my weight. My mom has always been very, very concerned with my weight. And I really got to see the contrast between the two of them when I was home in June and July this year. My sister really will stick up for me when my mom picks on me, and my sister doesn't really like say much about my weight. I don't think she really has, which is like so relieving. Like I can tell that I feel more comfortable around my sister because of that. Around my mom, like on this last trip, I got to the point where I like was really self-conscious about what I was wearing and how that showed off my body. And I was self-conscious around eating around my mom, and it's just such a, like, I puts me on edge a lot. And then both of them, like, make comments about my hair. Like, they're always concerned with, like, my hair. And I don't give a fuck about my hair normally, but it's like literally I get my hair cut like once every 9 months or something like that. Sometimes it's once a year. You know, like I just don't think about my hair that much. I brush if it's brushed, and like if I'm going out, I might like curl it, I'll wash it, all that stuff, right? I just don't really care that much. I don't care that much about my eyebrows, but it's like this ongoing push and pull, which is part of my point in sharing all this with you. It's like this ongoing push and pull of being afraid of what other people think of me. It's like, I don't really care what my eyebrows look like, but I do care about what other people think of me. So maybe I should take better care of my eyebrows. But it's like, I notice myself going through waves of feeling self-conscious and then not caring. So I haven't done anything to my eyebrows in months. But then like the other day I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, like they look a little... You can't fully tell here. It depends like how concerned you are with your eyebrows. But, like, you know, they could use a little work on them. And then I'm like, do I need to go to a professional to get them done, and spending the money and the time to get that done? And I'm about to go, you know, when I go back in September, I've already scheduled like a haircut because I want to make sure that my hair looks nice. And part of that is like to get that validation from my mom. Those are the easy things. The tougher thing is my weight. And as I've talked about a lot in the last few videos, it was really, really tough. The past like few months, I've had a few people point out my weight to me, and I don't think anybody online has said anything. A lot of people bring up my throat, and I get questioned very frequently, like, have I had my thyroid tested and all that. And it's a huge sore subject for me. I have not had it tested yet. I've been being asked that for at least a year off and on, and I just want people to leave me alone. Like, let me figure out my health for myself. On my last video, I was talking about, like, why do I feel this way? And I was feeling really low energy and unmotivated and just, like, didn't want to do anything. And I see how there's a tie-in with the thyroid, but the thyroid stuff just, like, triggers me, right? Because... it's like, it's one thing when you hear it once, but when people keep asking you the same thing, you're like, I've already heard it. I've taken the information. I'll figure this out. And it just reminds me of my mom, because my mom is a type that like nags a lot. She's relentless, and for better or for worse. Like, it's a great quality if you're like trying to achieve something for yourself and you need to just like push people to get things done. But unfortunately, my mom's personality does not translate well to me, whereas I grew up feeling like this mother that was always nagging me to change. And so I think when people comment about any element of my health and my appearance, and I hear it multiple times, I get really frustrated because it feels like people are telling me something's wrong with me. That's really what this comes down to. And it's like, who wants to feel like something's wrong? But again, if you have the viewpoint as I think I still have this, but I know I've had most of my life, this viewpoint of right or wrong, it's like, no, there's just so much stress, you know, like so much of my life, even though I live on the outside a relatively stress-free life, like my life is very relaxed for the most part. And sometimes I feel like it's too relaxed because there's so much that I could be doing. But that's the thing, is in my head, there's always something that I could be doing. So anyways, the coffee thing that I started off talking about earlier, I mentioned that because, you know, it's like that right or wrong. Like, is coffee right or wrong for you? Everybody has different opinions. For the most part, I've heard a lot of really positive things about coffee. I feel like if you have high quality coffee and there's not a lot of sugar or other junk in it, there seems to be a lot of data that says that coffee is okay to have daily. But when it comes to caffeine, that's when I start to wonder, like, if this is affecting me in a negative way. I don't know. All right, the other subject, which all ties into what I've been talking about today, is the whole what I'm doing about my body right now. So I put myself on, how do I describe it? A regiment, I guess, of to really like get results as quickly as possible. And I know that that's because I'm going to see my mom in just about a month, like a month and a half or something. And not a month and a half, sorry. I wish. I'm going to see my mom in like 5 weeks. And because of how she acted about my body when I was last on the East Coast, I feel really motivated to turn things around. It's almost like I want to prove myself to her, and also it's like, as I said earlier, that striving for validation and all that stuff. But I also feel like I'm using that. I know that's like the basis. Like that's just like rules a lot of my decisions. That childhood desire to get my mother's approval. But I also feel like I want to look better, you know? I have put on weight over the past year or two, and I don't feel that comfortable in my clothes. Yesterday I went out to a clothing swap with a friend, and I was wearing a dress, and I felt so self-conscious. Like more than I normally do. I could feel like my thighs rubbing together, so that felt self-conscious. I looked in the mirror and felt like my waist was really big. And then I was at this clothing swap with a bunch of really petite girls, and the whole time I was like, I know I'm the biggest girl here, and you know, they're all trying on clothes, and like every once in a while somebody would say something and that would trigger me to like feel really self-conscious. You know, like, oh, well, I have some clothes in your size, and like singling me out as a size, and you know, like stuff like that. And I just like felt so self-conscious, right? And anyway, so I know that all of that is the internal. That's the physical. I mean, that's the mental side of it, right? That I need to work on, and I am working on every day. Just awareness and building self-esteem and loving myself and all of that. But I'm also just really curious about what my body will react most to. So I guess what I'm doing right now is it's an experiment, because I have ongoing issues with food. Like I haven't had pecans in a while, pecans, however you want to pronounce them. And I'm going to tell you more about the diet stuff in a moment, but I bought some to eat so I could have a variety of different nuts, which are something that is recommended for this diet. And I noticed after eating them, like my mouth had a reaction to them. I don't think I would have known that if I weren't experimenting with this diet. I found out years ago that I'm sensitive to almonds while I was doing a Candida cleanse. And it was because one thing that I could eat on that Candida cleanse was almonds. And I was eating so many almonds, and suddenly, like, I started to notice a trend between how the bad feeling, the physical reactions, and the almonds. And so that's how I figured it out. And I've done a lot of experimenting with food over the years, and helped me hone in on my sensitivities. So anyways, I love experimenting with different diets just to see how I feel, what my energy is like, what my body looks like, what my gut, how that reacts, and my skin, and you know, all these different things. I think a lot of us just eat food based on how it tastes or so many other factors, but not really clear on the ingredients and how those affect our individual bodies. But with that said, there's also a big drive for me right now to get in really good shape because of all the things that I've been mentioning today. So what I've been doing is working out a minimum of 5 times a week. I go to a hot yoga studio and do their strength training classes. So I love the place I go so much. They have all these different style classes. A lot of times when people think of yoga, they just think of stretching and poses, and it's kind of slow. But the classes that I take, there's a couple different styles at the studio. you use weights, you hand weights. So minimum 2 pounds of weights, which doesn't sound like that much, but you have one in each hand. So it's minimum 4 pounds. And you're doing so many reps that they really affect you, right? So I need to build up more strength in my shoulders, because one of the exercises we do like involves a lot of movements up and down and back and forth and curls and all these different types of things. And I can feel the weaknesses in different parts of my shoulder. And I do a lot of planks and stuff like that. So it's been really great because I'm going so frequently that I'm able to see the changes in my body strength and the definition in my muscles and all of that. And it's awesome. But I also realized that fitness is not the only thing that really impacts our health, the way our bodies look, and also how we feel. So over the course of the past month, I've just been considering, like, how can I change up my eating? Because clearly I had been doing something for the past year or two that was putting on pounds. I mean, when I weighed myself back in June, I was shocked at the number on the scale. I'm not going to say what it is, because the scale is just like one factor, but it was really shocking. I honestly, based on just looking in the mirror, like, didn't think I'd gained that much weight, but I have been feeling insecure about my body for at least 6 months or so. And so it was just a wake-up call, and I was like, okay, well, clearly I haven't been prioritizing fitness enough, because at the time I was like really wishy-washy about working out. As you may know, I went through this period in the month of January, I worked out every single day in January, almost every single day. I did like a 30-day challenge. And then in February, I used the excuse of being tired from that 30 days and feeling some strain on my muscles. I actually did feel like I injured, or strained, I should say, on my right hip and leg and knee, that I was pushing myself too far in January. So, and then in March, I decided to put my membership on hold because I was traveling, and I used like all these excuses. I was saving money and I was traveling, like on and on, just a lot of excuses. So I wasn't working out that much. And I think I was also just eating a lot of processed food and just like, again, making a lot of excuses. And I'm somebody that I thrive, I should say. I don't like to use the word need lightly, but I really thrive off of feeling like needing some sort of a schedule and conditions, right? Like deadlines I really work well with, and having goals I really work well with, and then having consistency and momentum are huge for me. And so if I stop working out for a few weeks, it's really hard for me to start working out again. And any type of workout feels like so intense. So it was tough for me to start working out again, but I started again in June, I think. And then I traveled for a few weeks. And then this whole shift in determination to get in better shape and lose the weight that I had gained has really pushed me to working out a ton. So my goal is to work out at least 5 times a week. And what I do is plan to work out 7 days a week. And that way, if I don't meet that 7, I'll do at least 5 or 6 days. It might sound intensive, but it depends who you ask. There's so many different perspectives on fitness and all that. And the classes I'm taking are so wonderful because it's really only about 45 to 50 minutes of intensity and then at least 10 to 15 minutes of rest. And they're great teachers, and it's at a really nice studio, so it kind of feels like I'm working with a trainer but in a group setting. And it's just awesome. They help you with your form, so all the teachers there are like really good about helping me understand how to hold my body, and we've got mirrors there, all these things. So I'm like really paying close attention to all the different elements of working out, and it feels great. And it's also hot yoga, so I'm constantly sweating, and like I actually have been meaning to do some more research to see how much of a difference that does for your health and weight loss and all of that. I feel like sweating seems like you would like lose a lot more faster, but I don't know if that's true. I really love hot yoga personally. Like there's just something about it that keeps me in the zone more, and I've experimented with a lot of yoga over the past 12 years. And this is just my favorite. Plus, I love the combination of the yoga and strength training. So then in terms of my diet, coming back to that, I was trying to figure out what type of diet would feel best for me, would be sustainable, at least for the short term, for like a few months or so, and really give me some good results. And I'd been hearing a lot about the keto diet, so I looked into it, felt very curious about it, and thought that I would give it a try. So I'm doing a very, what I consider, loose version of the plant-based keto diet, which basically involves very low amount of carbohydrates and lots of protein and fat. And I'm really enjoying it. I've only been doing it for, I think I started experimenting with it 2 weeks ago-ish, and got really serious about it about a week and a half ago. And I actually really enjoy it. It's pushing me to eat a ton of vegetables, and I'm also enjoying being able to eat a lot of fat. Like I've gone through phases where I've been oil-free or really low oil, and now I feel a little less nervous about having oil, which is kind of relieving. You know, like it's nice to cook vegetables with oil, even though, you know, there's just so many doctors that say not to have it. So I'm just trying to have it in moderation. I'm not going crazy with it. But the keto, paleo people are like really into coconut oil. And so I honestly, it just feels nice to have it and not be like afraid of it. Like that's the thing is I've done like 80-10-10. I've done high carb, low fat, all those different things. And those are fine. Like I enjoy doing 80-10-10. I did it for like a month or 2 years ago, and my body looked great. I was enjoying the simplicity of it. Came up with some great recipes and found some great recipes. I enjoyed it, but I haven't felt a huge desire to go back to it. And I actually thought about going back to 80-10-10 or something similar to it a few months ago, and I was like trying to ease myself back in, and I just like, it didn't feel appealing. Whereas doing my current version of like a low carb keto diet actually like works. It feels really easy to me. So I am somebody that usually eats a lot of rice and rice products as well as quinoa. And so the big change for me was taking that out. Instead of, like, I'm someone that would usually have rice or quinoa to just make a rice bowl. And so now I'll do cauliflower rice or broccoli rice. And I had never really experimented with them too much. And now I'm finding all sorts of cool ways to use those. And it's really pushed me to having more salads. For a while I was on like a big salad kick. But now I've been doing a lot of like roasted vegetables and stir fries, and instead of brown rice noodles or other gluten-free noodles that I would typically have, I've been playing around with shirataki noodles, which are awesome. Again, another thing that I knew about but didn't really have much experience with, and now I'm obsessed with them. And zucchini noodles, and like all these foods that are so much simpler than a lot of the things that I was eating. I'm also somebody that had a tendency for a while to eat a lot of packaged snacks, and mainly like chips. So I had a big kick where I was eating these vegan Rob's cauliflower puffs or Brussels sprout puffs that have like probiotics in them and sorghum, and I think they're all organic. Like the ingredient list is really nice, but I was eating a whole bag in one sitting, and then I looked at the bag and realized there was like at least 2.5 to 3 servings in there. So when I looked at like the calorie and the fat count and, you know, all the other nutrients, I was just like having so much, you know, just over consuming all of these processed foods. So one thing that I've been loving about experimenting with a low carb diet is like I'm so focused on unprocessed foods. And that is a really big deal for me. Again, I did that when I did 80-10-10, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum, when I was just eating mostly fruits and some vegetables, like a similar thing where it felt really good to just like eat a lot of mostly unprocessed, or to mostly eat unprocessed foods. So yeah, I mean, like yesterday I made like basic Brussels sprouts with a little bit of olive oil and nutritional yeast, and it was like heaven on earth. I've been making like green beans, which I'm a little unsure. It's the confusing thing about the keto low carb diet is like even vegetables can be high in carbs. And so it's interesting because some things, like you're not supposed to have corn, and these single ingredient plant-based foods, not and fruit too, like there's a lot of fruit is high in carb because of the sugar count. So like it's pretty strict, and I'm just not trying to be overly strict with it. I'm trying to consider the strictness but allow myself some leniency. Like you're not supposed to have legumes, but I have had tempeh a few times, and that's because some of the vegan keto diets, there aren't very many out there, but there are some people talking about it online, and they will recommend that for the protein source. So it really upsets my stomach, and that's something that I tend to have in moderation, but I love the taste of tempeh. Anyway, so I've just been like coming up with all sorts of interesting foods, and like I'm also intermediate fasting. So this is what I mean when it's pretty extreme what I'm doing relative to how I was before. But I'm just so curious about what my results will be, and I just want to see what happens over the next month or 5 weeks. So in addition to working out this much and changing up the diet to be low carb, I'm also doing the 16-8 intermediate fasting regimen, whatever you call it. So right now, I eat between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m., and then I fast from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. So I'm trying to switch up my sleep schedule so that I'm awake more in the morning when I'm fasting. But I fast basically that 8 or 9 hours that I'm sleeping, and then a few hours in the morning and a few hours at night. And during the fast, you can have black coffee or water. I don't know. Tea seems to be an iffy thing, but I'll have tea. Like, again, not trying to be super strict about it. And I'm just, there's a lot of research about intermediate fasting, and a lot of people will combine keto and intermediate fasting, including Halle Berry is somebody that's talked a lot about that. Not that the celebrities have all the answers, but I've just been researching a lot the benefits of intermediate fasting. And actually, one thing that I see very frequently, in case any of you are curious about this, is that a lot of people see big health results just from intermediate fasting. Like that alone, there's tons of examples of people that have lost weight and have gained more energy and just like have seen vast improvements in their health from intermediate fasting. I always say intermittent fasting, or IF is what they say. So intermittent fasting just seems to have, like, people have tied it into longevity. Of course, like a lot of these things are very trendy, and so I take it with a grain of salt, and that's why I'm looking at it as a short-term experiment and not necessarily a long-term thing. I don't know how long I'll be experimenting with the low-carb keto diet. I definitely plan to do it until I go back to Massachusetts, and again, just to be fully transparent, a lot of that is a motivation to see, like, how in shape I can get in the next month or so, especially I'm just going to be transparent about this. And these are the things, I see a bunch of live comments coming in. I promise I will read them. But I just also really want each of you to be gentle with me. I want to share my life with you and the things that I'm trying out. But I don't need to hear your opinions on my decisions, if that makes sense. Like, right now this is really important to me to try. And I'm always open to hearing people share their experiences and their results and things that they've learned along the way. I just don't have room right now for judgments about the decisions that I'm making. I'm trying to be very aware of why I'm doing things and what my motivations are. And I think that the most unhealthy thing that I'm doing right now is being motivated by my mother's opinion of me. You know, I'll be completely transparent. There's a superficial motivation for me to lose weight and get in better shape so that when I see my mom in 5 weeks, I will look better than I did a few months ago. It's like there's a part of me that just wants to prove to her that I can be in great shape, right? My mom was actually she told me, I don't know how true this was, but she told me that she was concerned about my health. And she also told me that it was triggering her because her father, my grandfather, got really sick. I forgot exactly what happened, but he got really bloated and he gained a ton of weight in his stomach and his whole body just became really bloated. And I think it was like a lung-related thing that eventually ended his life. And so my mom claims that she's concerned that there's like some hereditary thing and that I'm getting bloated. Like, I don't know what I don't know why. Like, everybody gets triggered by things for reasons we may not understand. So I was grateful that my mom told me that she was concerned because I looked bloated and I had gained weight. I think she wondered if there was something wrong with me health-wise. And my instinct is that there's not anything major wrong with me. I will be getting testing at some point, and I do plan on getting a thyroid test. But I take such good care of myself overall, and I don't have a history of any health conditions. So my instinct is that I just was eating poorly and not moving my body enough. And I think that that's why I'm looking at this next month as a big experiment. It's like, what happens if I spend a month and a half, 2 months total, because I've already began this. So, the next 5 weeks plus whatever time I've been, working out and taking better care of my food habits. I want to know, like, will my body change? Or at the end of that time frame, do I still look bloated and do I still carry around extra weight and does my throat look swollen? I want to know if this is a case of like some deeper issue, or is this a case of me needing to work out and eat better, right? Am I having food sensitivity, something I don't realize? Am I, who knows? That's the big reason, right? So there's that core desire to get my mom's approval and have her tell me that I look good, right? But there's also the bigger thing of like really trying to figure out my body, because my mom's not the only one that has told me that I've gained weight, and I know I have. When I stepped onto the scale in June, I was really surprised. And speaking of scales, I don't know if I've ever owned a scale, ever. So I did actually decide to buy a scale a few days ago, and I got this really neat one that can not only tell you your weight, but approximately how much water weight you're carrying, your body mass index, your bone density, is that what it is? Or bone, I don't know, something like that. And then your body fat percentage. I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know if it's like a rough estimate based on your height and your weight, or maybe somehow the scale can pick it up because you have to step on it barefoot. So I have no clue. I need to research that too. But I really wanted to track and see if these things were changing based on my diet and fitness routine and the fasting. And actually, I have noticed a difference in just a couple days. So I'm going to track it out long term, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after a month. And I will definitely report on that. But I was really it's been really interesting to track my weight every day. And it's also interesting to track my weight in the morning versus at night. It's interesting to track it when I drink a lot of water versus like when I use the bathroom. And like there is a difference. Like peeing alone, I've noticed almost a 1 pound difference in my weight. So I actually find joy in like weighing myself right before I use the bathroom and then right afterwards. And just urine, there's a heaviness there, right? And maybe that sounds obvious, but it's just interesting that when you weigh yourself, your weight is going to really fluctuate throughout the day. After when you wake up, you've been sleeping and fasting, when you first eat something, when you use the bathroom, when you work out, like all these different factors. And it's really been encouraging to me to see that my weight's going down little by little each day, even if it's like a point percentage or something like that. To me shows that I'm making progress, and I find that just really encouraging. The big key in all of this is just not to go overboard with it and not to become too obsessed. And right now I know that I am on the border of being a bit obsessed with this, and so I just have to be very, very conscious. And I've had people in my life be concerned, and I know why, because I struggled, or probably still struggle, with disordered eating and body image and all that stuff, and I think a lot of people do. So I just have to be like very, very mindful every day and very clear about why I'm doing things and what's motivating, and I need to make sure I feel good and other things besides my weight look good. And I do plan on getting the testing done that I mentioned. So I found out the other day that there's this really great mail-in testing kit that can test things like your thyroid and your food sensitivities. So I'm planning on doing that. I think that the thing that's kept me away from doing testing is I don't have a primary physician right now. I have health insurance, but it's not like great health insurance. It's very basic because I don't go to the doctor that much. And I'm really nervous about just going to see like a random general practitioner at some, like, I don't know. I'm making a lot of judgments and assumptions, but I'm nervous, like, because in the past, most of my doctor's experiences, like, have left me feeling like I'm just a number and I'm just a patient, and that they don't really know that much, and they don't really, it's like they tell me things that I don't really give me any information about my health. So I have a negative impression of most doctors. I would like to see a naturopath and holistic types of doctors and all of that, but they are a bigger financial commitment that have been willing to spend. So I think part of this experiment that I'm doing for the next month is just to see how I feel and really pay attention to how I'm sleeping and how I'm feeling, my energy levels and how I'm looking and all those different factors, and just being very mindful about it so that when I do see a doctor, I have a lot of data to bring them and awareness. I think that's very important, and maybe doing the mail-in tests in the meantime will give me some insights, and then eventually I can go see an in-person doctor and compare the results. And I think, to me, that feels like at least a step in the right direction. So that's the story. I'm a little afraid to read the live comments right now. The whole point of doing live videos is to communicate, but just want to share that I get really nervous when I talk about things like this, and I'm being really vulnerable, and I'm just have a habit of really judging myself based on what other people say about me. So reading comments has always been hard for me, and I know most of you that watch live are very supportive and loving, so I trust that most of the comments I'm about to leave will be supportive. But it's just like people have so many different opinions, It's like, I think that's the thing is having this mentality most of my life of right versus wrong. I want to do the right things all the time. I want to be right. I want to do right. And what I've realized over my lifetime is that there's a very blurry line between right and wrong. And a lot of what is right and wrong is based on opinion and perspective. And like when it comes to dieting, for example, like right now, intermittent fasting, IF, and keto, low carb, those are trendy. And I'm doing them because people are talking about them a lot. So there's a lot of information being passed around. But do we know that if they're really healthy or not? Like, a lot of the data is so new. How could we really know? Granted, the low carb keto diet has been around for a while. It's just hasn't been as trendy. And so has fasting, right? People have been fasting throughout history in various ways. So yeah, they're trendy, but like, they're also not like super new. But even you could say that about the vegan diet. Like, there's still so much data to come out about the vegan diet, the plant-based diet. So you just, again, have to take a lot of this stuff and really tune into yourself and see how you're feeling. So consciously, I can look at people's comments and opinions and know that they generally are just opinions based on somebody's research and experience and knowledge and so many things. But there's also a part of me that when I read comments, I'm scanning to see if people are agreeing or disagreeing. And when people disagree with me, I have a tendency to feel really bad about myself. Because I think I've been like raised or conditioned to be terrified of getting things wrong. Right? And I think right now in our society, and also based on how I was raised, the wrong has been gaining weight. You know, my mom I remember since I was a little kid, like, my mom was like, it is wrong to gain weight. And that's like such a variable too. Gaining weight could mean so many factors. Like, weight is so relative to so many things, but there was a general compass of where my right weight was. And I've just had a number of factors in the past few months telling me that my weight is wrong at the moment. And so it's a really sensitive subject. I don't know if my weight is right or wrong, or if there's even such a thing, but mentally the programming is that my weight is wrong. And that's why it's a sensitive subject, because basically I feel like I'm living my life wrong right now. And I think maybe that's something I have to continuously acknowledge. This is like a relatively new realization for me, right? Like, even just yesterday when I started thinking about my view of right and wrong, I am recognizing that I've lived a lot of my life just trying to be right, trying to do things right, trying to do the right things, trying to be a good person. Like, right and wrong is like good and bad, right? And so I feel like it'll benefit me to step off that mindset as much as I can and have a more balanced perspective and know that there isn't necessarily a right or wrong in most elements of life. It's hard for me to even think of examples of right or wrong. You know, even when it comes to things extreme as like murder, what if somebody's killing another person because that person was trying to kill them? It's like, you know, you look at, this got very dark, but I'm just giving you a very extreme example of right or wrong. Generally, we view murder as wrong, right? But what if it's self-defense? Is it still wrong? Like, that's what I mean. Like, there's so many black and white things in life. Like, I honestly just don't know how much really is wrong in this lifetime. It comes down to the exact scenario. It's all relative. And I think I was raised by a mother who had such a black and white perspective. And at the core, I don't really have a black and white perspective. I feel like I'm somebody that just views life as a lot of gray areas and wants to be really accepting and wants to give people a chance. And what I'm striving to do is to fuse that, is to bring my consciousness to my unconsciousness, if that's exactly what's happening here, is like take my outward perspectives and bring them more inward. And so much of my inward state has been out of alignment with my outward state. I need to be as gentle and understanding with myself as I am with other people, because I know that when I look at other women, like, I notice when a woman's body is different from another woman's body, and I notice when people look heavier than that, you know, others, right? Of course, like, I think it's hard not to notice. I notice differences in skin colors, and I notice differences in genders, and like I notice those things, but I'm sure there's part of me that's judging them based on bad habits. But for the most part, I feel so loving to somebody regardless of how they look. And one of my biggest goals in life is to be that kind to myself and stop judging myself for how I look. You know, like, I promise I'll get to the comments in a moment. But going to yoga so frequently, I'm in the changing room. And in the ladies' room, I imagine it's true for men too, but I don't know actually. But in the ladies' room, a lot of women will walk around completely naked. You know, they'll get out of the shower and they'll be getting dressed, they'll be toweling off. Like, there's a lot of naked women in there. And they're all different sizes. And I feel so much joy when I see a woman that has a body similar to mine, because it's rare that you get to see a naked woman with curves. I feel like the media just perpetuates so many thin women with big breasts, like that average model type. Like, that's who you see if you're watching pornography, or you're, you know, looking for any examples of a woman. Like, if you see them in a bikini, or you know, whatever else, like magazine covers, like a Playboy, whatever it is, right? Like, any examples of when you could see somebody barely clad or completely naked. Most women, I feel like, are this stick figure with perfect abs or really toned muscles and big breasts and all of that. So when I'm in the changing room and I see somebody that's curvier than that, who looks basically like me, it's like, oh, finally there's someone that looks like me. I'm not alone. I'm not bigger than everybody else. And when I see someone that's larger than me, I'm thinking like, wow, like, I look at this woman and I'm not like judging her weight. I'm just thinking she seems like a really nice, beautiful person. If I have, you know what I mean? And I think that I've just spent so much of my life thinking that other people are judging me for my weight all the time. It's probably not really true, A, and B, I think that fear of what other people are thinking of me is more reflective of what I think of myself. And I need to shift that, because it's not serving me, and it's only bringing me pain and obsession and disordered thoughts about food and fitness and all that other stuff. So it's an ongoing journey. I've seen therapists about this. I've been to doctors about that. Like, you know, I've been dealing with this for a large part of my life. This is nothing new. This is just something that I'm speaking out on more. And it's an ongoing journey to find the balance of mental and physical relationship with my body. So with that said, I'm going to read the comments. I'm still nervous about them, but we're in this together. So, let's see here. Lots of comments. Thank you for all your kindness. I'm going to put them up on the screen too. So hello to Rachel. Rachel, you have such a sweet energy. If you're still watching, I want to acknowledge how beautiful of a soul you are. And someone pointing out that LA is a very image conscious town. It is. And it's definitely interesting to live in Los Angeles. For that reason, because especially like when I go to fitness classes, at least 75% of the people in my fitness classes are in just like insane shape. And I look at them and, oftentimes in class, I feel like I'm the curviest girl in class, right? And it's like, I don't know if that's just my own lens on the world, but it's tough. It's tough when you live in a town where there are a lot of really beautiful women with figures that I don't have and I wish I had. So yeah, it is tough. But I really love LA for the most part. And I want to say hi to Green Dragon. Comment about buying organic nuts. Good point there. To save money, I'd been buying some of the more expensive nuts at Trader Joe's, and they're not usually organic. So maybe I should experiment more with how my body reacts to organic pecans, because the ones I was eating that I had a little bit of reaction to were not organic. generally I eat organic, but you know, nuts are so expensive. So maybe I should stop cutting corners on that. Rachel said, I understand what you're saying. I've been doing yoga for the past 2 years. While I definitely felt stronger, I didn't see a change in my body. I see a change in my body in flexibility through yoga, but I see more of a change when I do the yoga classes that are also based in strength training. So that's why I really love those, because it's a combination of both elements of yoga. And Rachel also said, the last month I changed my diet and I'm finally losing inches and feeling better in my own skin. That's great. You know, another thing I didn't mention today, but has been part of this journey, is being more patient with results. I've been back in yoga for the past 2 months, but really kicked it up a notch in the past 3 weeks. And in terms of my diet, it's still super fresh. It's like maximum 2 weeks in. So I'm trying, and intermittent fasting, I just started less than a week ago. So I definitely need more time, and I will keep you posted. I love having this next 4 to 5 weeks to really track everything. So I'll keep each of you posted on the progress that I'm making over time, but I'm glad that you pointed that out. Say hi to Liz, who is here. Angry Vegan brought up zoodles, which is another name for zucchini noodles. They're not my favorite. I really like the shirataki noodles, which are white yam noodles. There's a brand called Miracle Noodles. There's House Foods. I love the texture of those, and they don't have much of a taste if you rinse them. So that's probably what I'm going to have for lunch and dinner. And, oh, Rachel's doing intermittent fasting too. That's wonderful. Angry Vegan said, it's funny how humans are the only species that can't figure out what to eat. I know, right? I'm sure we can figure it out. It's just that we live in a very confusing culture for the most part that gives us so many different messages about food. I mean, before I was vegan, I thought that milk was healthy, right? And then I learned afterwards that it was a big media scheme. And like, I remember thinking of all these different things were healthy, wheat bread. And then I found out I have a gluten sensitivity. It's like, it is very confusing. And so the experimenting has really helped me figure out what works best for me. But I've been experimenting for many years, and I don't know if there's an end in sight. I hope so. But I don't yet know what the perfect diet is for my body, if there is one. Okay, Yadi says, I'm glad that what you're doing seems to be helping you be healthier. Thank you. Liz asked, does my mom ever watch my videos? I don't think so. She would definitely tell me if she saw a video like this. But as far as I know, she doesn't watch this. She probably doesn't even know that this channel exists. She definitely knows that my other channel exists, but my mom is supportive when it feels right for her to be supportive, if that makes sense. So like, being supportive in her mind does not mean watching all my videos, but she does, pay attention to what I do on Facebook. I don't know if she pays attention to what I do on Instagram. She does have an Instagram account, but she barely uses it. So unless I'm doing something on Facebook, she probably has no idea what else I'm doing. And in terms of my videos that I do on Facebook, they're generally not this type, so I don't usually talk about these things on Facebook. And even if I did, I don't know if my mom would even watch a video that was an hour long. So I want to say hello to Aurelian, who's here. So Liz also asked, I'm starting the keto diet. Do you have any advice on being vegan? I would just do a ton of research. So what I have done is I've looked at a bunch of websites that have shopping lists and meal plans for vegan keto. There looked like there was a bunch of books on Amazon. I haven't read any of them yet, but there were at least several books that were vegan keto or vegan low carb, right? What I don't know yet is like keto in terms of, I think a lot of keto is like tracking your macros, your fat, your protein, your calories, all that stuff. Like you can get very precise on the keto diet. You can actually get blood tests. You're basically trying to get in ketosis where you're burning fat. You can do urine samples, although some people say that those aren't very accurate. Like there's so much data, and I'm like so new to all of this. So I'm like, keto is still confusing to me. But I have the framework for it, which is approximately how much carbohydrates and how much fat and what foods to eat and what meals. And so I basically just been Googling recipes and looking at shopping lists and getting a basic understanding of it, and then just like really paying attention to how my body feels each day. Like, for example, I haven't eaten that much today. I wasn't super hungry, but now I can tell I'm getting hungry, so I better eat more, because with also the fasting, I try to like eat at least 2 really well-rounded meals between 12 and 8 p.m. because then I don't want to be hungry later on. So yeah, I need to go make myself a meal. And so my main advice would be just to do a lot of research, like Google, do web search for vegan keto. There's not a ton of data out there yet, but you can dig around and find a good framework for it. And then just also look at general keto advice, and then replace the meat and eggs and other animal products with some really good plant-based sources. And I think if you're eating enough calories, tracking your calories or knowing based on your energy level and you're feeling satiated, I think that's a huge thing too. And I'm not really tracking my calories at the moment. It feels like a little too much if I tracked like every meal I ate, but I probably, like, they recommend doing that, so maybe I will. I just have to find the right app or whatever to do that. And thank you to Lizzie for being here. Yadu said, this video helped me with my own mental health. Thank you. You make me feel normal and help put things in perspective. You're so welcome. And some random person coming in. It's funny when like you're doing a live video and someone that you know who doesn't watch your videos comes in and leaves like a troll comment. But it doesn't, those things don't really faze me. When it's a stranger or someone I can tell does not know me or my channel, whatever, like, for some reason those things that can roll right off my back. But when somebody like seems to be pinpointed on me and they like kind of know me or have been watching something like that, like that's the stuff that gets to me. It makes it more personal, I suppose. Anyways, I have been talking for over an hour. I need to figure out if I'm going to yoga. That's the one thing about yoga. It's a little stressful because I don't have my car yet. For those of you who are curious of my car journey, I meant to talk about that today, but I'm not going to because I'm running out of time. I ordered my car and I should be getting my new car in the next 2 to 4 months. My gut says I'm going to get it in October, and I'm really excited about that, but I'm still carless, and it makes going to yoga a little challenging, and I've just been feeling low energy today. Since I'm still new to keto and intermittent fasting, I feel like my energy levels are still fluctuating, and I'm just trying to like balance everything out. So that plus like maybe caffeine highs and lows, I don't know. My energy is just kind of all over the place today. So trying to decide if I'm going to go to yoga or not. We'll see. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to go make myself a meal. And thank you so much for watching, especially those of you who watch live. I really appreciate, I get nervous about reading the comments, like I said, and then I look and there's like everything's so sweet and supportive, and so I'm really, really grateful for that. And I hope that this does help some people. It feels really good to share, but it also feels even better to help other people. So if I can help you along the way by identifying my struggles and sharing things that are working and all the experiments I'm doing, then that's a really rewarding thing. So sending you all lots of love, and know that we're in this together and we all have our individual journeys. It's just a matter of becoming aware about what really feels right for you in your life, and simultaneously not knowing that the right and wrong is so relative. That's one thing that I'm really focused on now, is like, what will my life look like if I stop looking through the lens of right and wrong, and really focused on like what feels good to me, not maybe what feels right. I guess like maybe right or wrong is only the compass of yourself. not based on how it relates to others. Because if we compare our lives to other people, I don't know if that really serves us, to be honest. It's a complicated topic, so I'm going to end it there. I'm going to go have a meal, and sending you lots of love until I make my next video. Bye.